Marc Krikorian from the Center for Immigration Studies. Mark, how are you?
Doing very well, thank you.
What a time in America, huh?
Yeah, no question about it. Trump campaigned on being tough on immigration, and he's doing it. I mean, there's stuff still to do, but I call it it's the big bang of immigration enforcement. His two executive orders, and there's presumably more on the way. I've seen drafts, but they haven't released the other ones yet on a whole bunch of other issues.
Yeah. I guess the initial pushback right now is this talk of sanctuary cities. Correct me if I'm wrong, but CIS has basically, didn't I see a map on your website where you basically show which cities have declared themselves as sanctuary?
Yeah, we have a map on our site. It's gotten a lot of mileage, and we have a report too called Tackling Sanctuaries. We released, maybe a month ago or so, and lays out a lot of the arguments that the pro-sanctuary people make and why they're false. That it's somehow preventing cooperation with federal authorities is necessary for, community trust, for instance.
Right.
Complete nonsense. It's just not true. I mean, they've looked at the issue in a number of ways. A place, for instance, outside D.C., excuse me, very publicly entered into cooperative agreement with ICE, so that when the police arrest people and they check them, if they're illegals, they work with ICE, and ICE takes them over. Well, before and after that development, there was no real difference in reporting of domestic violence. There was no real change in reporting of crimes from Hispanic communities. The cops make clear if you're a victim or a witness, they're not fingerprinting you, so they don't care what your status is. What a sanctuary city really means is that when the cops arrest somebody, just for whatever, drug dealing, whatever it is they're arresting the guy for, they book him, scan his fingerprints. It's all done electronically now. That scan immediately goes both to the FBI and to Homeland Security. Homeland Security, it goes through their computer. If a guy pops up, they look at it, okay, what is this? This guy may have been deported 5 years ago, and now he's back. And just being back is a felony. It's a federal felony crime. So they'll send a request, hey, Mr. Police Department, can you please hold on to this guy if you're not going to prosecute him, because we want to pick him up. A sanctuary city says no and lets him go. Or they say, well, if he were a real serial killer, we might hold on to him for you. But, he's only a drunk driver. He's only a wife beater. He's only a drug dealer, so we're going to let him go and not hand him over to immigration. They're basically making up their own immigration policy at the city or state level, and there's no excuse for it.
No, there is no excuse for it. And, I wonder, I talked to a legal expert yesterday on what luck they might have going to court and suing over this. He told me that a lot of the funds that President Trump was discussing withholding from them are grants that come from, for example, the Department of Homeland Security, which the president and his administrator over there would have authority over, not necessarily Congress.
Department of Justice as well, too.
Right.
But the courts have said there are limits. The federal government has to, they can deny funds, but there has to be some connection, some reason the funds are related to what the government wants the locals to do. That's why, for instance, the federal government basically forced all the states to raise the drinking age to 21 by saying they withhold transportation funding.
Right.
And again, it's kind of a dubious connection. Yes, okay, kids driving drunk and all that, but I mean, that's much of a less of a connection than any number of other reasons you could cut off funding.
Mm-hmm.
So they're definitely going to do it, but a lot of places are just not going to. They're going to fight that, and if they lose the money, New York, San Francisco, they're going to just stiff it out, and so Justice Department is probably going to end up having to sue some of these places.
Yeah.
It's kind of the mirror image of what Obama did to Arizona, that, was sued for trying to help enforce the law. Now they're going to start suing these jurisdictions for interfering with federal law enforcement.
Well, this is exactly what I expected would happen. Yesterday, the mayor of Miami-Dade County, Mayor Carlos Jimenez, I assume that's how it's pronounced. The first letter is a G and not a Y, but it's Jimenez. Came out and this is how he described it. He ordered the county jails to comply with President Trump's steps to crack down on undocumented immigrants. The move effectively ends the county's status as an immigrant sanctuary. This is a CNN story. When you read what he's talking about, here's what he kind of wink. It's kind of a wink and a nod at the camera. And he basically says the only thing that's going to change is that we used to require the federal government to give us a letter stating they would pay for the expenses of us housing an illegal immigrant we had in custody, and we would maintain custody when they requested it. The only thing that's going to change is we're no longer going to require that letter. So we'll just comply with the federal government's request to keep the prisoner in our custody that may be an illegal immigrant for the federal government till they can come and pick him up.
Well,
so they can still pick and choose, right?
Well, maybe, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't sound like it. I don't know. I mean, I haven't read the specifics of it, but it doesn't sound like it, because the question is who does the picking and choosing. Really, that's kind of what it amounts to. Who decides who gets deported from the United States? Is it the local police department, or is it federal immigration authorities? And when you put it that way, the answer is obvious.
Yeah.
The locals don't get to decide. I'm not sure on the specifics in this case, but it could, it sounds like it could be a legitimate thing.
Well, let's hope so, because what reports are you hearing? I heard Donald Trump say that the numbers were down along the southern border. Maybe the flow has even reversed a little bit. I'm not sure. Have you got any reports lately on?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the number of people illegally infiltrating across the border is down from the super high peaks of 10 years ago. There's just no question about this. Fewer Mexicans coming. Still a lot of Mexicans, but fewer. The thing is, much of the slack has been made up by Central Americans.
Right.
So the number being caught at the border over the past 3 years has been going back up. So in other words, it was going down for a while, and that's a real thing. It really did go down. But it's now going back up, and it's Central Americans that are making up now something like half the people they catch on the Mexican border, which is remarkable, but also is something that the administration can deal with, because the reason you're seeing that flow is not just because things are lousy in Central America. Yes, they are, but they've been lousy for a long time. What caused this flow is Obama's policies of letting Central Americans who say the word asylum into the country, and just with a court date, a court summons, something years in the future. Very few of them obviously bother to show up, and they weren't looking for them. And so that's basically an invitation, almost like Angela Merkel invited all those Middle Easterners, illegals, to come into Germany last year. This is Obama's kind of smaller scale but similar thing. That's something we can fix, I think. And one of the executive orders from this week addresses that issue specifically, telling the Border Patrol we're ending this catch and release policy where they'd arrest illegals and give them some piece of paper and then let them go. 80% of everybody that the Border Patrol had been catching on the border, they had to let go into the United States under Obama's policies.
Wow. That's just stunning. Now that they're about to replace the head of the Border Patrol, yesterday I had an interview with Sheriff David Clark from Milwaukee County. I was thinking in the back of my mind, I wonder if Trump has not considered him for that position.
For Homeland Security?
No, for the head of the Border Patrol.
Yeah, maybe. Usually, the one who just left was the first guy ever who was not a Border Patrol agent who was raised up to head the Border Patrol. Obama did that, basically on purpose. I don't think so. I mean, I think, the Border Patrol agents have such a connection with Trump that I think he's not going to bring in somebody from the outside. Yeah,
that's probably a good point. Marc Krikorian, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate the great information. I'll direct people to your website at cis.org.
Thank you. Happy to do it.
Yep, take care. Thank you. Good, always good to hear from Mark. And you ought to look at that map. There's a link up here to the maps of the number of sanctuary cities and states in America. Just go to cis.org and look it up. It's pretty stunning. All right. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit with the professor